Junior Volleyball Association presents Sideline Strategy, a volleyball podcast. This week's episode features Academy Volleyball Cleveland's co-founder and assistant director, Paul Schiffer, as he discusses investment strategies.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in today. It's Paul Schiffer with ABC Volleyball. I've been a founder, been the club director since we started about 15 years ago. And besides that, I also am a senior executive with a shopping center developer, and I have business experience for 43 years with them and been doing it for a long time. I assume that most of you are looking in and tuning in today. Is new first-time club directors or wanting to grow their club. You've already made the leap of faith and are into the club system, or you're thinking about getting there. I would assume that's probably our two audiences for the day. If you made the plunge, congratulations. It's a lot of work, and I'm sure you've found out. And if you're thinking about it, hopefully we can give you some information and some insight here to help you get through that. I think most of you are probably here and probably in the volleyball business because you have an absolute passion for the sport. You have a passion for coaching. I'm going to go out on a limb here a little bit and say, I don't think any of you are in it just for the money and said this is a wonderful money venture. And I think I can learn about volleyball to be good. I think the sport is what's driving you to be here and not the business opportunity. The business opportunity is something that's a natural evolution for your passion and love for the sport. The thing is with starting a club is you really must find a balance, starting or keeping one going. There must be you must generate enough income to support it, to support the business. I'm sure you know it sounds very remedial, but the revenue certainly has to be there. Critical to that is, and you must know the fundamental that I found out probably the hard way in doing this is this is a business. You have to tackle it as a business. It's not this is volleyball that just happens to be a business. This is a business that just happens to be involved in volleyball, and you have to run it with that discipline in mind. And that's really taking into account some of the basic and even not so basic business fundamentals of you have to establish. Well, let me start before I get into that and say, I think you need to decide what kind of club you're going to want to be. Is it going to be and this doesn't have to be something that's forever. This isn't a one-time decision. This is an evolutionary decision that will grow as your business grows each year. But are you going to be recreation mostly? Are you going to be travel? Do you want to compete at a national level? Do you want to be both? Do you want at ABC? We're both. We have a regional element that's mostly recreational. We're 52 teams strong. We have 22 now national teams, and we have another 30 that are recreational and play within an hour and a half, and it's 80% recreational. At that level. So you have to decide on what you're going to be, and be very truthful with you in that decision-making process. And to my point of evolution, we started out as nothing but a regional club in a high school gymnasium with 4 teams for the first 5 years. And all of a sudden we decided to grow. An opportunity evolved in our market where we could fill a niche. And I'll talk on that in a moment about filling a niche. And that's a big key to your success. When we found a way to get in and expand, all of a sudden those fundamentals changed quite a bit. We went from a recreational club that we were in it just for the love of the game. We were trying to hopefully break even. And the truth is, for the first 5 years, we didn't break even. We were funding it out of our own pocket, mostly as a hobby, like you would golf or or something else and enjoy it and to enjoy it. Fortunately, the group of people that I was invested with, we had the money to be able to have that luxury. But by doing that, we really got our knowledge of volleyball down because we were all very good business people. At least I think we were. And we really learned the volleyball business inside and out. And I think that's critical. You got to learn the rules of your governing body, and how to work around them with regards to recruiting and all those elements. And that all comes into play as you put together, your game plan financially for how you're going to do it. Like I said, it's not forever. It's evolutionary. It will evolve. You must find a way to differentiate. If you got a passion for volleyball, but there's a boys void in your market, maybe coming in with boys is what you may want to do, even though your passion is really in the girls' indoor sixes game. If it's having some sand to augment that, it's also a big part. Another part of deciding who you want to be, and this also becomes an evolutionary part, is do you want to be a gym renter from high schools, middle schools, churches, and other functions, and someone that has to go out and work those relationships and negotiate those deals? Or do you want to be in the business of leasing a space and owning your own facility? I'm going to assume many of you that are startups or looking at it probably aren't in the facility business yet, which means you're really going to have to be watching what you do with regards to your relationship with the schools and the CYOs. Is schools canceled? I know a lot of schools aren't allowed to run events in the evening if they canceled school for the day because of snow or whatever. And a lot of our venues are in the Rust Belt where we do get some weather. So you're going to have to communicate that and a lot for that, and have some allowances for that. You're going to have to build a budget, and from the budget, you're going to want to, you're going to want to know, you're going to want to have plenty of money, and you're going to want to be conservative in your budgeting. You're going to want to plan for unknowns, even if you don't have a line item to call that unknown. Know that you need some extra money. There are 100 ugly snakes of expense that will raise their head and take a nip out of your money. And there are so very few surprise income revenue sources, I should say. The revenue sources they aren't as self-generating as the expenses. And by that, with the expenses, I mean just the unknowns. You got to give a refund to 3 kids that got hurt and aren't playing, and you're operating on a fine line to begin with. There's just all sorts of things like that. Or you may decide that we're not giving any refunds of that nature. But that in the beginning is probably difficult because you're trying to establish yourself as a new club. You don't want any words of people on social media, or anyway, any backlash, I guess is the word I'm looking for. You're going to want to try and avoid that at all costs. And another element that may be very helpful for you is utilize, and we did this very well in starting our club, and it was not because we're good. It just happened to be absolute happenstance that it came about. But we utilized a whole lot of the resources that we had that cost no money. And you have to always be on the lookout for those. I will tell you, and I'm very happy I did it this way. I made great relationships, but we utilized players in the club whose parents were attorneys to look over just problems that we may have, or we wanted to go a different direction. Especially important when we made the evolutionary step from a renter to being a facility owner. We really utilized people that knew stuff about real estate. I was among that group, but there was also, we utilized legal, we utilized accounting firms from people in the club, and most of the people are willing to help and give you a little bit of gratis work if you will, especially when they think it may help their kids, and that becomes a fine line that you have to walk, but you'll have to manage that as a club director. Getting back to the budget for those costs that you just don't know. I mean, there's everything, uniforms, coaches, tournament fees, registration with your governing body, facility rental. Don't underestimate insurance. I know that JVA provides insurance for events and some other things. And if I'm misspeaking, Bray will correct me at some point. But you still need, if you jump into the facility business, you need insurance on your facility. Someone slips on water coming in and gets hurt, whether it's a player, whether it's grandma coming to watch, or grandpa coming to watch. It's certainly something you have to be insured about. Be wary if you decide to jump into the facility management. I'll tell you a personal story with myself. When I had to do this, we took on a lease, and the lease we got a very good lease, but it was still $120,000 a year. At $120,000 a year, we signed a 5-year lease, which had a value of $600,000 if my math is correct. I had to personally guarantee that. If the club went bankrupt or out of business after year one, I was still on the hook for the remainder of the term. You're going to want to have to watch that and know if that's something you want to be, because you're in it for the love of the game. You're in it for the love of coaching. And now it's become a business. And let's make no mistake, it's nothing but a business. It's going to drag at your love of the game, because the business can become overwhelming. We say it all the time in our club. We work all year to coach for 50 matches a year that each last an hour. So for 50 or 60 hours a year is the real joy we get out of it. And the training is some real joy also, watching the kids develop. But boy, the paddling underwater that goes on is really, really taxing at times. And it comes up when you don't want to do it, and it's midnight, and you have to put all that time and effort into it. And then when you got to go solve parental issues, which are just that's part of our business. That's what we have. If you get into the facility business, utilize your facility all the time. It is your number one source of revenue. We utilize it. One of the big things we utilize it for is coaches. I'm sure I'm telling a lot of you that the coaching market's gotten very tough. The sport continues to grow at an exponential rate. Just here in the OVR, I was on a call the other day, and they said we had 2,000 additional kids sign up. That's, almost a 10% gain in what was already a record number of participants. I think we have over 25,000 registered adults and children in the OVR. So it just continues to grow. I never would have guessed it could have grown by 2,000, but that's put a demand on coaches. And the coaches that used to coach for the love of the game and to have their expenses covered are now wanting, needing, and deserving of some more money. So I don't have the money to pay them all what I'd like to pay them, but I'm able to provide, when I have a facility, lessons, and give them the right to do lessons out of the club at a very discounted rate. I think we're at $20, $25 an hour, and the coaches are charging $75 an hour. So they're making $50 an hour by me giving them a discounted rate on that. And that's one way to secure coaches, knowing that they have that, they can get their coaching Jones, so to speak, satisfied by giving the lessons, and also supplementing the income. Run camps whenever you can, run clinics. We do a ton of 2-on-2, 4-on-4 tournaments that bring in kids. Tournaments are really good because they bring in kids from other clubs, and it's a chance to other kids to see your facility, to see your culture, to see what you're doing there, and and really come forward and be part of your club in the future, maybe. I think the last real element I wanted to touch on is, don't lose track. This is now a year-round business. You have to create a budget, knowing, and I've said budget 4 times, I can't stress enough how important it is for you to think about every expense put a line item on it, and either become a quasi accountant yourself or work with an accountant to know where you are against that budget, where it's stacking up, where you're running over, where you need to make more income. We budgeted 15 teams, we fell short. Each one of those teams was making a contribution towards corporate overhead or your overhead as far as reducing the gym time expense. And if one team didn't come because you only had 7 kids for that last team, that was money you were counting on in the budget. So where's the expense cuts? Much the same way as you would run a household. I mean, that's the first evolution of running a household income to that. But there are a lot of things that will rob you from your desire and your love for the game and your love of coaching. And if you manage them and you're out in front of them and not playing from behind, it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot easier. I would tell you the last thing that I have. One of the last things: do not borrow money if at all possible. And if you're starting a facility, you may have an urge to borrow money. And that makes sense when you're buying sport court that has a useful life, a capital life of 5, 7, 10 years for sport court. Then you can borrow money and amortize, and the payments over time do make sense. But if you're borrowing money to pay for operating expenses, that is a recipe to spiral into default or bankruptcy very quickly and not be solvent. I'll say it again. Try not to borrow. Borrowing money to pay ongoing expenses, business expenses, would be like borrowing money to buy groceries for your home budget. It's not sustainable. It's not going to work, and it's going to eventually lead to some failure. So I want to address a couple of issues in a little bit more depth. One of the keys that helped us in the beginning was having a passion for the game, much like I spoke about earlier with your passion for the game. And we love the game. And we had 3 investors that invested capital, and some of it wasn't a ton of capital, but what they invested most of all was sweat equity and the willingness to go down. And you're going to do all of that as a club director. You're going to be a part-time janitor. That saves on the expense side. You're going to be the accounts receivable collection person. That saves an expense there. You're going to be the person that's doing hotel reservations, booking, scheduling, and you're doing it because you love it. You have a passion for it, and it's dictating the culture of your club. As you grow, you're probably going to need to pay some people to manage that and help you with that, because if you get into that quagmire of doing all the micro stuff, you will never be able to charge forward with a vision for growing the company. All you'll be doing is trying to keep your head above water. When you do your budgets at the beginning of the year, I said you got to be conservative, and you got to budget for some expenses. And no matter what you think, there's always something else that's going to happen. And you better have some money set aside for it. We talked about not borrowing for the operating expenses. If you absolutely must have to borrow, the easiest way that you're going to think is to borrow from a credit card. And that couldn't be wrong. You're going to pay 24, 28% interest. If you've got a relationship with a bank and you can get a loan, I mean, truth is, I took out a home equity loan on my home to start this. And if you're going to do that, get an accountant also, because you're going to need someone to work with you on that and how to make sure the money gets right for your taxes at the end of the year, and that, which can be really costly. We screwed up one year and we had some taxes that we had to pay quarterly ongoing because of that screw up, and that was reaching into our pockets. Fortunately, we had some investors that had some money, and we could certainly draw on them so that we didn't have to go on the bank. But they also want to return. They don't just give the money away. They would like to return. They're banking on the future. So that's where we went for money, but we would also go to our banker for a little bit of money in the start. But only by budgeting can you foresee this. If you find out in month 10 that, oh my God, I'm out of money, that's a problem. You should be able to forecast that unless there are unforeseen circumstances that that would arise. And if you budget correctly and have an eye for the future on what can go wrong and put some allowances aside for that. In the rare case, you finish the year, and in the beginning, I say it's rare. Hopefully, you're growing the business to a point where it becomes the norm instead of rare. But I can assure you, the first 5 years, it's rare as you have excess cash at the end of the term, the end of the year. I would tell you, sure, take your staff out for a little dinner, celebrate your good year, take maybe just a little tiny something for yourself to reward yourself, to motivate yourself to go back, but leave the bulk of the money in the business. Leave it there as working capital. The more you have working capital, the more ways you can find to generate additional income. Heck, just this year, we've taken on hosting a CYO tournament, hosting 2 or 3 other events, hosting regional things. Now we have a facility. It's probably significantly different if you don't have a facility. Even more important to keep that money in your pocket, not burning a hole in your pocket. You're going to find out you need equipment. You need traveling ball carts for people that are going to travel. You're just going to need more and more stuff that you don't foresee. And that's not unique to the volleyball business. That's unique to every business, is to keep a reserve of capital. Another big part that you better budget for, I don't care how good you are or whatever, is you better have a reserve for bad debt. Bad debt is an expense item. It's an expense item in any business. I mentioned before, I'm in the real estate business. We budget 2.5% to 3% of our revenue billings is bad debt. So if you're going to have 10 teams each contributing $10,000 in billings, I'm going with round numbers for it easy. It's $100,000 in revenue. You're going to have to budget $3,000 dollars is a bad debt. It's just the nature of the business. Bad debt is a cost of doing business. It's recognized in generally accepted accounting principles, and you're going to want to budget for it and have it there. And hey, the best case is you collect 100% and you come in under budget on that expense item, and that's more money to keep around for next year. With that, I'd like to tell you thanks for tuning in. Reach out if you have any questions. I would certainly be more than willing to share with you any insight I can, and tell you what mistakes I've made, and God knows we've made plenty, and tell you where the pitfalls are and where the opportunities are. Thank you.